Hey everybody, I'm Ashley,
And I'm Simone.
and welcome back to No Small Talk podcast, where we are just trying to discuss great ideas. and
Like
to
great
get
minds.
my great minds, that's it. It is no small talk in the evening, if y'all can tell. All right, so today we are talking about save the planet, eat a cow.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I'm very excited to talk about this with you. For all of you, now you will know Ashley's very passionate about nutrition, and she is a baby homesteader. I don't want to say baby because you've been doing it for some years
It's
now.
just a couple since 2020.
Okay.
So I'll kind of give like a background to like my passion with nutrition. So it really started off in high school. Like I had a passion for exercise and nutrition, and then I found nutrition's all chemistry. I'm like, yes, it's chemistry. I didn't do so hot in chemistry. So I was like, if I'm not going to do so hot in chemistry, that really steered me away from nutrition. And what got me into poli-sci, which is how Simone and I met.
Yay.
Right? And so, but I still love nutrition and studying, like learning about how food affects the body and really how food is healing for the body. We demonize food in our culture, but really food is the key for our health and it's the key to our well-being. And it ties into poli-sci because there are so much politics around food.
Yes.
And especially when they try and tie ethics into food. And so kind of exploring these ethical foods and the politics into foods. In college, I was vegetarian for a couple years. Then I went vegan for a bit. I gained actually a lot of weight being vegetarian, being vegan. And the reason was because I was hammering down peanut butter because I was starving. And peanut butter is rich in seed oils and it has a lot of sugar in it as well. And so that was just messing up my metabolism like you wouldn't believe. And I was storing it as fat. And so here I was always hungry all the time and yet gaining weight, which doesn't really seem like those two things go hand in hand.
That sounds so frustrating. You think you're doing this diet that's cleansing you and you're eating mostly whole produce and whole foods, but for some reason you're gaining weight. You don't like how you feel and you're starving.
Your clothes are like fitting tighter. The one time I actually, like when I was vegan for a few months, the time I actually lost weight was because I would eat fruit in the morning, salad for lunch, and a salad for evening. On our way to the cafeteria, if I didn't eat exactly at 5, I would pass out because my blood sugars were running so low. So I was not in a healthy state, but because of the whole food culture and like looking back, I was dealing with some food issues, borderline anorexia. I thought I was okay. And this is how you should feel. You should feel like you want to eat your next, like, yes, you should feel hungry, but you shouldn't feel like you're on the verge of passing out. If that makes sense.
No, it does.
So very not a healthy relationship with food. And the reason I was vegetarian and vegan, I said, okay, I would eat meat if I knew it came from a ethical resource. Meaning if I knew that these were animals raised in an ethical way. I was against industrial farming, which I still am against, and that's why I homestead today, is cramming all these animals into tight spaces where they get sick and then they are processed out. Fast forward to now, my husband and I, we homestead, and a huge push for homesteading for me is to get natural, organic-based food, healthy meat for my family. You could pay for it, but the main push for us and what keeps me motivated, because homesteading is a lot of work, especially when you work full-time and you got 2 littles. What keeps me going is the fact that, number one, if I were to buy this food at the grocery store, especially right now, we couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
Like straight up, we couldn't afford it. Like my husband and I, we find good food at reasonable prices. And yes, do you have to do some work? And yes, we do put in the work for growing it ourselves, harvesting it ourselves, saving it ourselves. We go find farmers markets where they do sell it in bulk. And then we can preserve it when it's fresh. Like, for example, you pick strawberries. I think I paid like $15 and got like probably 7 or 8 pounds of strawberries.
Wow.
But it's you pick. So my daughter and I spent a couple hours out there picking strawberries by hand. And then we froze them. And we froze, I think, 12 or 14 cups of strawberries to enjoy over winter. We wanted to pick more. I was several months pregnant at the time. And so a couple of hours in the field, I was like in my third trimester squatting, trying to pick these strawberries. So physically, I could only do so much.
Oh, but berries all winter long. That's amazing.
And not like we only have 12 cups, or 12 or 14 cups. I forgot how much we actually preserved. So it's not that much in the grand scheme of how long winter is.
But $15 for that.
Exactly.
Much.
I think we
We're
ended up
usually spending
$5
a carton.
Exactly. It was like $2.50 a pound or something like that. But you had to pick it yourself. To get healthy food, you do need to work at it. And you can grow it yourself. Seeds are dirt cheap. You'll get more than you sow. Wow. So that's a huge tangent. My little long story.
It's a good introduction. I mean, because just to know that's your background with the food and your why behind the work that you do in homesteading and what the priority is, which is like healthy food from your family. And it's inspirational because I'm so weird not near that. I try to just buy my Miller chicken, my good old Amish chicken, and some vegetables and try to go with it from that perspective. But I really appreciate our friendship and the fact that you have been teaching me here and like different tips on like how to eat healthier, how to like be more aware of like where my food is coming from and be more cognizant of that. I mean, it's not so far removed. I mean, we used to be a very agrarian society, and I even grew up with exactly. Like I grew up with my grandparents. They lived in a city, but they had a garden, and he grew a lot of their produce throughout the year. Like, I mean, we picked fresh strawberries. We definitely had greens, collards, lettuce, tomatoes, carrots, radishes, like things like that in the garden. I know he doesn't do it anymore because he's 92.
That's why he's 92. He's like eating all this fresh food.
Because he's eating good food.
It sounds like he's in great condition too.
Yep. So I mean, like I need to learn. I don't have a green thumb to my knowledge, but I'm gonna try. I have a vision of being this old Southern woman with like a big hat who gardens and being really good at it. I'm not there yet, but
well, and your grandpa would love to bestow that knowledge upon you. Like nothing would make him happier than you putting the seeds in the ground and him sitting there telling you how to do it. As much as it's frustrating to have people tell you what to do, because I hate having people tell me what to do. I'm like, I'll figure this out.
No, but that's so true. I mean, the only thing I ever grew on his land was some sunflowers, and they grew so big that they had to cut them down because they were blocking windows.
But you grew something that's huge.
Yeah.
And sunflowers make beautiful bean poles. So if you ever want to grow green beans, grow a green bean near a sunflower and it'll climb up the sunflower.
I did not know that.
My mom did that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then you cut the sunflowers down in the fall and you have these beautiful flowers that you bring inside your house.
And I love sunflowers.
Yeah. Okay. I do too. They make purple ones.
What?
They make purple. I will send you a link to Baker Creek Seeds and you're going to fall in love with plants. They make purple sunflowers. They're gorgeous.
We need to plant. I know we need to have a garden. I'm like, okay. So sorry, getting off topic.
Well, I think this is kind of what we're kind of addressing right now. We're opening up with us talking about vegetables, is that vegetables aren't bad. Right there.
No.
So exactly. I think right now we are in a polarizing argument that we see a lot on Facebook of carnivore versus vegetarian or vegan. And we are in like, you have to be one or the other instead of, again, finding middle ground.
Yeah.
So
omnivores, which is technically what humans are supposed to be. It's the healthiest thing.
There is actually biblical backup. And I'm not saying the Bible says this is what you must eat. I am not saying that. I believe we have freedom to eat what we want. And there's a verse that gives us freedom to eat what we want. A couple of verses actually that we'll touch base on. And I want to kind of highlight, like before we really get into it, the main thing I want to point out is that whatever food choice the person wants to make is their own food choice. They know their body. They know what works for them, what is healthy for them. I am against a propaganda towards one food or one specific diet, no matter what that diet is, specifically governmental propaganda. And I think anything like, this is a huge spectrum, and sure, give me a tinfoil hat if you want.
But like the push for dairy, like I think, is that fall into the category?
Against dairy, to me, anything that the government pushes is a form of propaganda. Whether you agree with it or disagree with it, it is a form of propaganda. For the government to be like, you should do X, Y, Z, and make it a social issue to do X, Y, Z, is a form of propaganda. In theory, the government's, and this is probably my own belief system coming through, but the government's supposed to just provide protection for your borders. Here's the science, make your own decision, because each of our bodies are so different. So if I come across very strongly against a dietary style, what I'm really trying to target is the propaganda towards dietary styles. And that's what I wanted to highlight. Like, individuals' choices to eat what they want, go for it. I had a journey with food. I shared a little bit of my journey with food that ended me up on a homestead, growing it now. Raising chickens.
I think it sheds light though on the fact that we all have a very personal and relationship and journey with food, like how we view food, where we're sourcing it, how we're even going down to cooking and how we all like to cook, or if we don't cook, or if we can cook or can't, like we're all kind of walking through what is going to be our relationship with food. And I think the issue with the push and the propaganda, as you're saying it, I think is because you touched on this a little bit earlier, but how that's relating to ethics around food. And it's almost like assuming what type of person you are based on like what diet or what thing that you believe is best for you and your body, which I think in a sense is super divisive and it's not always helpful. And these pushes aren't always, I don't know, sometimes backed by actual science or knowledge, which is frustrating.
I feel like all science, a lot of the modern day science is paid for results, which is a struggle for all sides of the situation. So it's hard to draw a logical conclusion when you have to look at who's paying for the science. And when I say the science, I should say the study. And
follow the money. That's what I like to say. It's like with all the issues I think we're even going to talk about, a lot of them that are kind of borderline societal, political, it's like you have to follow the money. It's like, why are they pushing this?
Exactly. And I think a part of the reason too why the big meat debate is coming up right now, whether or not you should be eating meat, is that there has been a law that was passed to approve lab-grown meat as something that is you can eat, and bugs. So people are pretty upset. And homesteaders are like, you know what? This is why I raise my own chicken.
Wait, okay.
Like, we gotta buy 50 more chickens.
When you say lab grown, can you elaborate on what that means?
So the FDA has cleared lab grown meat for human consumption. It's been approved by the USDA. So let's say, what is this exactly? So looking at health.com. So if you guys want to do this research on your own, I'm using health.com. It is cleared lab-grown poultry for human consumption. It had no further questions regarding the production of cell-cultured chicken by California's, it looks like Upsides Foods is doing this. So what lab-grown meat actually is.
What does that even mean? Like, is it mean that they're grown inside facilities, or is it like it's not even real meat and it's a test tube meat? You know, have some test tube chicken.
We take a cell sample from an animal or fertilized egg and extract the cells that have the ability to grow into animal tissue or meat. From there, we put those cells into a large stainless steel tank called a cultivator that resembles a beer brewing equipment, and then we provide the cells with nutrients they need to grow and multiply. Cultivating meat enables the same biological process that happens inside an animal by providing warmth and the basic elements needed to build muscle and fat, water, proteins, carbohydrates, vitamins, yada, yada, yada. So lab-grown meat, I'm going to have to do some more research on that one. But let's do that in a different episode because there's a lot kind of coming with the whole food industry, lab-grown meat, and bugs. I'm going to talk about cows.
Okay.
So let's go back to cows. So yes. I was really surprised to find out that cows, even though they are currently being demonized for something that is harmful to the planet, not a sustainable food source, can actually sustain a family exclusively. Not saying ideal, but I'm talking about like you can sustain a family far healthier than you would if you harvested a bunch of wheat and fed that family bread for a year. I want to kind of start off with some of the reasons of why cows are being, in my opinion, demonized for being harmful to the planet. So this is some information I got from UC Davis. I'm going to just kind of list some of these statements that I've heard a lot of and probably are familiar. So cows are bad for the planet due to burps. So
methane. They're burps and they're farting.
I know. Can you imagine being told you're harmful to the planet? Like the next time someone burps, you should just look them down the eye and say, you are harming the planet.
Keep those gases to yourself.
Exactly. Nobody wants to smell that.
Wow. Okay.
And the reason like they're getting tagged for methane, bless their hearts, is because they are producing approximately 220 pounds of methane in a year.
Okay.
And typically cows, I think, are 2 years before they hit market, unless it's a veal. Veal is calf. So they're looking at these cows are 440 pounds of methane before they hit market. And even though methane is shorter lived into our system compared to carbon dioxide, it is apparently 28 times more potent.
Okay.
So it is considered an unsustainable diet. Due to cows overgrazing, the soil will be destroyed and erode the land. Cows do take up quite a bit of space for grazing, and they're just destroying the plant, eroding the topsoil. The hooves are compacting the soil, which makes it hard for plants to grow. That right there, this is destroying the planet. As someone who raises animals, a lot of those statements aren't true. So this is where like I struggle. Ruminant animals are actually the key to sustaining our planet. When I say ruminant animals, we're looking at cows, sheep, goats, bison, animals that eat grass. These animals are the key to actually healing our planet. Current farming standards are what are destroying our planet. So growing the corn, growing the soy, that is destroying our planet. And we'll probably, if not in our generation, our children's generation will destroy the topsoil enough and put enough cancerous chemicals into the earth that we're all guaranteed to pretty much have cancer, in my opinion. I don't have anything backing that we're all guaranteed cancer, but the amount of glyphosate, and my husband's going to roll his eyes at me when I say glyphosate because I'm all on his case about why we need to find a place without glyphosate. That's another tangent of how Monsanto basically took the same chemicals we used at war and said, hey, this is gross stuff. Let's throw it into our soil. So the exact same stuff we used to kill people, we now use as Roundup to kill weeds. And it kills us.
They recycled a lot of chemicals used during World War II. Gosh, if you've ever read like Silent Spring, which I had to for my sustainable business courses, but it's basically a book talking about how our modern farming practices are causing cancer and destroying our water supplies and soil degradation and all that jazz. So
it's terrifying. It is terrifying. And that's why, like, personally, my husband and I are starting to push people, like, if you can, start growing your own food because it's going to be much more nutrient dense for you, and you can avoid getting cancer into your food. Going back to the cows. So I'm going to start kind of taking these arguments apart. Number one, with the amount of methane and that we are concerned about it. Compared to the amount of cows we have now, think about like the early plains before the Europeans kind of settled and destroyed everything with their European practices. That was covered in bison. To a point, it looked like seas of bison. So in theory, we should have had a lot more methane gases going on right then, and that should have been much more harmful for the planet, but we don't look at that time as a really bad time. In fact, we had the Great Plains are known to be our breadbasket. They are a very fertile land, and they were constantly trampled by herds of thousands of bison. The reason that it was considered a very fertile land is, number one, the grasses are being maintained. They're being maintained naturally by ruminant animals. Your bison, your deer, they are consuming the seeds. The seeds are passing through their digestive system and being excreted out into a very nutrient-rich fertilizer that's 100% organic and will be decomposed, which feeds the soil, feeds the ground, and actually replants seed. So it was a very sustaining life cycle using ruminant animals. Hooves, we often say, oh, that tramples the ground and hardens it. Well, if you keep anything in a square, you're going to destroy that square.
Yeah.
If you put anything that moves in a confined space, over time, they will wear a hole in it. We see it in zoos. Animals have their paths through their little exhibit. Naturally, yes, those areas are going to be a little bit worn down. But actually, if you rotate your animals, mirroring the grazing patterns that we had, I'm going to say the early settlers, is that,
Yeah.
Is that fair? When we had all those bison, because they would move, and we had Native American tribes follow the bison. If you mirror that rotational grazing, you will actually improve the land because the hooves will actually dig into the earth and it aerates the soil.
Yeah.
It doesn't compact it, it aerates it. Even I remember driving through El Paso and we came across a feedlot. I'm going to tell you, it was very, very depressing. It wasn't hard dirt though, even though it's in El Paso, Texas, very dry. It was mud. And they had cows standing in mud in this feedlot.
That's sad.
It really is. It's industrial farming. And I'm not saying all industrial farmers hate their animals and are brutal to their animals. A lot of Western, where you get our beef cattle from, it is free grazing land. They finish the beef up on corn, but they have a lot of acreage where they rotate their farm through. South Dakota and the Badlands, I talked about farming in the Badlands, of how you need 27 acres for one cow. And but that is in the Badlands. The Badlands is basically like a desert. So you don't have as much grass there naturally. Michigan, that acreage shrinks per cow. You just need hay in the wintertime.
Okay. So
it's very much like, you can't, if they say this is how much on average acreage you need per cow, well, that varies per area, depending on your rain, your winter. There's a lot of different factors that go into feeding your animals. I'm going to take an example. We have sheep. For a while, we had 6 sheep. We ended up processing out 2. But for our 6 sheep on an acre and a half, it's like a 20 by 20 foot square, we would rotate them across our acre and a half. And they would stay there for a couple days, go to the next spot for a couple days, go to the next spot for a couple days. And due to Michigan's weather cycle and the fact that everything grows really quickly in the summertime, we could do that very sustainably without destroying the land. Winter time, they started to kind of destroy the land. We ended up putting them in our garden, but the reason they were destroying the ground is the ground's very soft. And again, the destruction wasn't compacting the soil down hard. It was making the soil very soft. And that's where you start to dig up your grass, and that's where you get dirt and everything, if that makes sense. Like it gets
where it gets muddy and sludgy, and they can't really feed from that, and stuff can't grow. Okay.
Exactly. And like stuff will grow eventually, but you just have that constant digging in there with their hooves. So a lot of air is getting in there, which is a good thing, but it's like too much of a good thing is a bad thing. So that is like the start of the destruction of land. So that's why we end up moving them to our garden, so they could do sheep things in our garden and it would be fine. So that's where I kind of struggled, was like overgrazing the soil. And especially compared to like, what's the alternative? When we look at corn and soy and wheat and barley and how those things are planted, even traditional tilling. So I'm going to take it down to a homestead level just because it's easy to knock down industrial farming. But I want to take it to even like a personal level of homesteaders, people who are gardening in their backyard. So when you till your land, it in a permaculture setting, that should look at like your open heart surgery in your land. So it's done with intent and not done frequently. We tilled our land twice. The first time we broke into it, and you break up that topsoil, and then that's kind of easy for you to start to or get into the soil to do your planting. We did it twice to grow the garden, and we did it deeper with a till. And since then, we have not broken into our land again. We have added leaves to it. We have added straw to it. So we've added things on top to help protect this topsoil. The reason is every time you till the soil, and I know like the person can't see me, but I'm like moving my arms to like as the tillers. Every time you till, the ground that's underneath those blades is actually getting pushed down.
Yeah.
So you have a very soft top layer that will, like, those nutrients are going to get eroded out of. And then the bottom is very hard. And so those roots actually can't go very deep to get those deep nutrients in from the bottom to bring them up to the top, you are compacting the soil, even though the top is very soft.
And that's what we do with most of our farmland, like every season.
Yeah. We kill it every single season. And one thing to point out too is why ruminant animals are the future is because you can't grow corn or soy in every climate. Yeah. But you can, like grass is very common. I've been out to West Texas and New Mexico. They have grass, not a lot. It's not very great looking grass, but they have a little bit of grass. You and I can't eat grass. Like we tried when we were kids. It tastes terrible. And every kid wanted to be like, what? Like have a grass straw hanging out of their mouth. Like we all tried it.
We can't eat grass, but they can.
Exactly. And they have 4 stomachs to consume grass in. They're specifically designed to break down the grass and those cellular walls. So let's say you have 2 acres. You have an acre where you can cut, and now you can cut down your hay. And you can have that for your winter time, and you can rotate your ruminant animals in the summertime. So they're grazing on fresh grass. And then come winter, you have storage of hay that you can't eat, but your animals can eat. Mm-hmm. Now you're thinking, okay, we need vegetables. I'm not saying that vegetables, like this is where vegetables are a plus and they're a variety for our taste buds. But you can live and thrive off of just animal products, which is where the carnivores are kind of saying you don't need vegetables.
There's people who don't think we need any vegetables.
Yes. And they are thriving. Like they are thriving. I do give them that. To go into not eating any vegetables is you have to eat nose to tail, meaning you eat organ meat as well. The reason is for your bone and your joints is you need collagen. So you can take the bones of an animal, you boil that down in water, and you create bone broth.
Bone broth, yeah.
It is full of collagen. It's very, very healthy for you. Another form of collagen is the animal fat. So taking pigs and cows, I'll stay with the cow, the fat that's around their kidneys and the fat that's around their organs, you take that, you render that down, and you create tallow. Now, tallow is great for cooking. It's a great collagen source, and it's also great for your skin. It actually
like cooking oil, but like okay,
you can eat it.
I did not know that.
They used to use tallow for skincare, so you used to put like on your dry hands, your face, and it is pure collagen.
Wow.
So
instead of buying those really expensive jars of collagen that
are plant-based and not easily absorbed into your skin. And this is my personal theory when I think of it on a cellular level of why we can absorb animals better than plants is that if you think of it, plants have a cellular wall that we have to break down to get to the nutrients. Animals do not. So it's much easier for our stomachs and our bodies to get those nutrients out.
I've never thought about it like that.
Because like everyone kept saying, well, what's a very easy like absorbable source of nutrients? It's always meat. And I'm like, well, thinking about it at the cellular level, which one would be easier to process and break down? If cows have 4 stomachs to break through a cellular wall to absorb all that nutrients, we don't. So I wanted to kind of bring up a couple of facts about the health benefits that you actually get from eating meat. So first off, we think of steaks when we think of, I'm going to go back to the cow because that's an easy example.
Yeah.
We think of steaks, we think of hamburgers, we think of ribs, we think of like all of roasts, all of this great
ribs are pigs. I'm just kidding.
Oh, you get beef ribs.
You can get beef ribs. Oh yeah. I've never really had beef ribs. I don't know why.
They're not as fatty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I prefer pork.
Me too.
I love pork. And animal fat's so good for you. I do like a fat on a steak. My in-laws look at me crazy. So Cody, my husband, came to my house, like my folks' house to meet him. And my folks cooked up the steaks and we clean everything. Like, unless it's gristle, it's gone. Like fat, meat, everything. My husband eats just the meat and leaves the fat on the side. And we all looked at his plate like, are you going to eat that? Like, if we go out and
you're wasting food.
It was like we're wasting food here. And like if we go out and we order a steak, I'm like, hey babe, are you gonna eat the fat there? He's like, he just gives it to me and I'm like eating it.
Thank you.
He's like, you're so gross. I'm like, this is good. This
is good for you.
Good for your cow. Exactly. But those are actually not the prize things. Even though prime rib is something we just want to enjoy and it's so savory and so rich, the prize things about ordering a beef are actually the organs, which is I know. It's something like we used to eat a lot of these. The prize items are actually liver, like your organs. So liver is the top organ you can eat. And I think everyone needs to be eating liver. I have a deer liver in there that I need to get soaking in milk. Liver is full of vitamin C, iron, magnesium, B12, and potassium.
Oh,
so how
healthy.
many are those?
I know. I'm just wrapping my head around the liver. I'm trying though.
I know. Like, and I'm like trying to eat nose to tail. And so for me, like if you're going to live exclusively off animal, you need to eat nose to tail. Need to. Mm-hmm. Kidneys, which I'm like, I haven't ate a kidney yet. I need to work on that. Protein, iron, vitamin A, vitamin B12, zinc, nutrients that help support muscle growth and repair, red blood cell production, immune function, and overall health. And tallow, which is the fat around your organs, that's chock full of vitamin D, vitamin K, and collagen. These are all nutrients that they say you have to get from plants, but are inside an animal.
Interesting.
And it's easily for our bodies to digest. There is a huge prize on this, and I kind of want to go back to scripture here to show, and this isn't scripture saying that you must eat this way. I want to emphasize that. That is not why I'm reading this. This first passage that I am reading is actually to echo the value of these organ meats, of why we should be including them more into our modern day diet, which I get it's gross as someone who has processed my own animals. I just, yeah. Ugh. So I want to kind of start off with Leviticus 9, Leviticus 9, verse 8, not chapter 8. So Aaron, and this is when they are doing an atonement offering, and like the priests are starting to do their atonement offering for themselves and then for Israel. So Aaron came to the altar and slaughtered the calf as a sin offering for himself. This is a calf. His sons brought the blood to him, and he dipped his finger in the blood and put it on the horns of the altar. The rest of the blood he poured out at the base of the altar. On the altar he burned the fat, which is what we render down of tallow, the kidneys, and the long lobe of the liver from the sin offering as the Lord commanded. The flesh and hide he burned up outside the camp.
But those organs were considered the offering, and they were the best part of the calf.
Yes.
Wow.
And they would have known that because they would have eaten those things. And in hunter-gatherer tribes today, they will give like the liver to like pregnant women and the elderly.
Because they know it's the healthiest part of the animal. It's
the healthiest, and you need those nutrients. And these hunter-gatherers, you have 80-year-olds climbing trees.
Wow.
Like, I know. Like,
I met a guy recently. He was like in his late 70s, and he had just built a kayak from a tree himself that he cut down, and he was going on a 134-mile, he said, kayaking expedition soon, like in the spring. And I'm like, and I wonder if he eats liver. I'm like, he looks great. Like, he didn't look 78 or whatever. Dang. Okay, cool.
He eats liver. I love that.
He eats liver. He probably does. He seemed like he was very in tune with the nature around him. I'm like, if you can carve a kayak out of a tree, you probably grow vegetables, maybe have some animals. I don't know.
Well, he probably doesn't eat a lot of seed oils. So a lot of our health issues are coming from seed oils. This is what a seed oil does. A seed oil is coating a seed. Now let's go back to biology of how we learned that seeds are naturally planted. So seeds are naturally planted by a birdie, goes to a berry, eats the berry, eats the seed, flies away, poops out said seed. Seed grows from a nitrogen-rich poop into a whole new plant. Mm-hmm. So seeds are made for us to consume and just leave us. They are not made to be broken down by our digestive system or our stomach acids, which are extremely tough because they can handle Coca-Cola and Mountain Dew, which if you're side tangent, someone opened up a can of Mountain Dew, took a sip, felt something solid hit their lips, and they ended up like opening up the can to see what it was. It was a mouse that had fallen. Yeah. And Mountain Dew, the person, I don't know, was that Coca-Cola makes Mountain Dew? They said, that's not possible that you would have a mouse in there because by the time you would open it, it should have been disintegrated. Coca-Cola can take rust off a nail. Like, these are very, very strong substances that our stomachs can handle. I wouldn't say always like a champ because we get ulcers. So that's how strong seeds are to pass through our digestive system. And I'm getting off on a tangent again because you could tell, like, I start on one thing, I get really excited about the next thing. I kind of wanted to address the guilt of and the ethics of why we shouldn't be eating animals and only plants. And part of like my research too was like when I went back to the Bible, the garden was given to Adam and Eve. They ate exclusively fruits and vegetables. And so I was like, well, this is the natural human diet. This is what we were created. We were created to consume only plants. And before sin entered the world, I am of the theory that even the lions ate vegetables and fruits and stuff. They did not, nothing died. Nothing like was eaten for meat consumption. This makes sense to me. I'm like, well, we are just following what we were originally created to do. This is addressed later on in Genesis. Due to our fallen condition and sin, our bodies do not absorb nutrients as they once did when we were first created. And so, which is why I believe God then gave us the animals. And so we were given animals for our own consumption. And I'm going to jump into Genesis 9 here. So this is God's covenant with Noah. So God blessed Noah and his sons, saying to them, be fruitful, increase in number and fill the earth. The fear and dread of you will fall on the beasts and of the earth, and of all the birds in the sky, and every creature that moves along the ground, and on all the fish in the sea. They are given into your hands. Everything that lives and moves will be food for you. Just as I gave you the green plants, I now give you everything.
Oh.
So, but you must not eat meat that has its lifeblood in it. And for your lifeblood, I will surely demand an accounting. And I will demand an accounting from every animal and every human being too. I'll demand accounting for the life of another human being. So basically, don't murder. He's going to demand an accounting for it. And like lifeblood in it, how I read that is eating an animal while it's still alive. I am against I personally don't think we should have the government doing all this propaganda that vegetarian and veganism is the only way and that animals are bad for us, especially as animals are bad for the planet, when in my opinion, as someone who homesteads and looks for like, how do I maintain land for my children so that I can pass down the land that I own to my children and they can maintain it and like reap a harvest from it, ruminants are the key to that. Mm-hmm. And especially because ruminant animals and their organs have all the nutrients that we are being told we need from plants. I can't say that, animals are horrible.
Why do
when I start, and this is from listening to like different health podcasts, when I look at the whole picture of the whole, we are being pushed towards soy and corn, which we can grow a lot of.
Yeah. To supplement our diets because it's cheap. And
it's cheap and it makes you sick. And now that ties into a healthcare system that's
keeping us sick.
That keeps you sick and makes money off of you being sick.
I'm kind of curious as to like what are the health implications from having like a high soy diet?
Soy, I do know, and this is from my grandma who had a tumor and the doctor said you need to avoid soy, is soy can create an artificial estrogen inside your body. And that's why they say
a lot of problems for women then, if you're like consuming a lot of soy.
And that's like, it also ties into like, if you're on birth control, that increases your estrogen in your body too. And estrogen, in my opinion, is a very aggressive hormone. Could just think of like mama bear and cubs. Like, how many women would you go crazy over their children? Like, especially if their children's in harm's way. It's just, estrogen's a very powerful hormone. Exactly. Yeah. Estrogen's a very powerful hormone. And it is why, in my opinion, like you see a lot of more like the crazy, like we often talk like, oh, look how crazy women are nowadays. Well, look how much they're probably estrogen dominant. And we're getting so much estrogen, like plastics too, like the things that leak into your food with plastics also look like artificial hormones for estrogen. We're just starting to see the effects of a ton of soy in our diet.
Okay.
And it takes like a generation to find the results. We do see an increase in dementia, eye issues, general health issues. And that started with our grandparents' generation. That's when they started doing more seed oils into our diet. And I should find the graph, but the graph of seed oils has just skyrocketed. And so has our health issues.
Yeah, that's almost too much of a coincidence to
Yeah.
disregard.
And I'm not like, and again, I want to attack seed oils. I'm not attacking vegetables in general. I'm not attacking fruits in general. I love fruits and vegetables. It's the seed oils. It's your avocado oil because it's made from the seed nut. It's grapeseed oil. It's your canola oil. It's your vegetable oil. I'm not saying avocados are bad, but that pit
But
is
the
a seed.
pit is what they're using the seed for.
Yes.
Yeah.
And olive oil, they use the olives crushed and the oil from that. So that's where that comes from. Tallow, lard are your best cooking fats. Bacon grease, there's a reason our grandmas saved the bacon grease. Like if someone said you need to eat liver, I would have been kind of disconnected to it had I not processed out my own animal. So when you take the life of an animal, that's a very personal process. And so you want to make sure that animal who gave the ultimate sacrifice isn't going to waste. And we've become very disconnected from our food. Like, so we used to have like looking at our grandparents' generation, and I would say the generation before that, we used to have homestead. You would have a decent backyard. You'd have a milk cow who, to get her to produce milk, you would have a calf. You would raise the calf and then butcher the calf off. So you would have red meat for, you could feed your family for a year on a cow, a full grown cow. The dairy cow, you're drinking the milk, which is full of fat and carbs. It's really good for us, and it's raw. So it's not pasteurized, which is how those lactose molecules become very hard and very hard for you to digest, which is why we're all lactose intolerant now. You're eating raw cheese, which has like some fermentation. It's good for your gut. Yogurt is really good for your gut. You're raising your own pigs. So you raised all these animals, you cared for all these animals, and then you take the life of these animals. And so you want to make sure none of that's in vain. And we've become very disconnected from that.
Yeah, we just look at the parts that we want from it.
Yeah. An animal to us is a grocery store. It's a package. And a picture on Instagram.
So this is really interesting. Even though I've never like processed an animal, I'm interested to learn like even just your perspective on how do we eat in a way that honors God?
That's really hard because like to me,
because our bodies are temples, right? Our bodies are temples in which the Holy Spirit dwells, and He only gives us one body, and we know that this is our temporal body, like it's not our glorified bodies yet. We're not there yet. But what do we do to preserve what we have and what He's given us and treat it like the gracious gift that it is? And in a society that pushes basically just really unhealthy eating, that encourages gluttony, that encourages basically toxic substances being pumped into our body constantly, then we're dealing, we mentioned earlier, like the pesticides and just eating animals that didn't have like a good experience here. They're either like trapped in these industrial farming situations. And I think everyone does their best. They do their best within the budgets that they have. They do their best within a society with a lot of mixed messaging. And obviously, I think people are just searching for what seems like the healthiest to them. And I think to a lot of people that is, okay, I'm going to have more plant-based diet. I'm going to have more of X, Y, and Z. But I think the fact is, or maybe I need to do more research on it, but I think a big issue with that is the fact that it's not that healthy, that people are realizing like even if they're turning to these specific diets, like they're not able to get all the nutrients they need, and they're using like supplements and other things to kind of infuse into that. So tangent.
I'm gonna go back. No, that was a great. I'm gonna go back to the question of how do we eat that honors in a way that honors God. So I'm going to take us to 1 Corinthians chapter 8. We'll start with verse 9 here. It says, "Be careful, however, that you exercise your rights does not become a stumbling block to the weak. For if someone with a weak conscience sees you with all your knowledge eating in idol's temple, won't be that person be emboldened to eat what is sacrificed to idols? So if this weak brother or sister from whom your Christ died is destroyed by your knowledge, when you sin against them in this way and you wound their weak conscience, you sin against Christ. Therefore, if what I eat causes my brother or sister to fall into sin, I will never eat meat again, so that it will not cause them to fall." So I'm going to kind of take it back to we have freedom. God gives us the freedom to choose what diet we want. Out of love for our fellow brother and sister, if we have them to our house, we would be mindful as a way to eat in a way that does not cause them to stumble or cause them to be angry or upset. If I have someone who is a vegan, I will not cook, pork ribs.
Yeah.
I would say, instead we would have a vegetarian meal or a vegan meal. So, or in the same way, if I have someone who is very health conscious come to my house and say, who is very concerned about, I'm going to pick on glyphosate being in their food, we would get grass-fed steaks where we know it's all organic, and we would get organic food, and I would cook them an organic meal. Now, would I pay that much money for my family to eat on a consistent basis? No, we'll try and eliminate it the other way. But if I would make a special effort to make sure that that person was cooked a meal that helped them feel like they were honoring God with their bodies and treating God because it is a very personal journey, and it's a very personal journey of like what we can afford and everything. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really the middle ground, is that we are getting caught up in the ethics and the governmental debate of whether it's right or wrong to do something. And I think we kind of have to go back to like what Paul says, that even though we have freedom in Christ, we need to make sure that we're not creating stumbling blocks for our brothers and sisters. So that's kind of all I had. We went on several different tangents. We tried to cover a lot of information in a short bit of time. If you have any great ideas that you would like to share with us, please feel free to email us at nstgreatideas@gmail.com. Send us your great ideas, and we'll look into it and see like what we can do to find a middle ground in this very increasingly polarizing society. So thank you. Till next time, y'all. Take care.
Take care.